Hi, I'm Roger Montgomery from Montgomery Investment Management, and welcome to this week's Video Insight. Immigration. It's the most convenient solution to the wage pressure now being felt across the developed world, the pressure that could entrench inflation through a wage price spiral. You may have noticed hope for immigration is not ramping up. From the UK to the US, New Zealand and here, the world is awash with jobs and nobody to fill them. Consequently, businesses are forced to pay more, workers and unions are demanding more, and already high supply-led inflation justifies the demands for growth in real wages. So what happened? Well, you might remember during the worst part of the COVID pandemic, Australia was one of many countries that offered fiscal support to those out of work or underemployed. Here we called it JobKeeper, and that kept the economy humming. Temporary visa holders, however, including international students and casual workers who hadn't been employed for 12 months, were notably excluded from the program. More than 1 million people in Australia were on temporary visas, and they were excluded from the government support payments. Now that's about 500,000 international students, 140,000 working holiday makers, 120,000 skilled temporary entrants, 200,000 bridging visa holders who were largely partner visa applicants or asylum seekers, and more than 16,000 temporary protection visa holders, commonly referred to as refugees. In the absence of support, many simply went home, and many of those may not want to come back. Meanwhile, those that do want to return or visit for the first time face egregious airfares thanks to limited airline capacity and international air travel operating at about 40% of pre-pandemic levels. The longer the situation persists, the sooner inflation ceases being solely a supply chain issue out of the control of central banks to a more endemic demand-led issue central banks will be forced to act upon more harshly just to control it. The fate of equity markets now hinges materially, but not solely, on the employment picture and how central banks navigate the very serious choice they have to make between inflation or recession. The US Federal Reserve is very focused on inflation, which is currently at 8.6%. Just recently, the Federal Reserve's chairman, Jerome Powell, said he will not let the economy slip into, quote, a higher inflation regime, end quote, even if that means raising interest rates to levels that puts growth at risk. The US central bank has moved to a do-whatever-it-takes approach, with Powell saying recently, and I quote again, the clock is kind of running on how long you will remain in a low inflation regime. The risk is that because of the multiplicity of shocks, you start to transition into a higher inflation regime. And our job is literally to prevent that from happening, and we will prevent that from happening, end quote. Thanks to that very tight labour market, demand remains strong and supply chains can't cope. Consequently, what was previously thought of as being transitory inflation is becoming entrenched. Higher wages demands come next, and following that, a wage price spiral. A slowing economy is necessary to bring down demand, and a recession in particular for the US and Europe may be unavoidable, as the US central bank leans towards killing inflation at all costs. Meanwhile, the liquidity that was injected into the financial system and economy during the pandemic is being withdrawn. US QT officially started, or quantitative tapering, officially started in June, but the effective global balance sheet has already shrunk by US $1 trillion since December 21. In such an environment, money literally being sucked out of markets, it's difficult for asset prices to rise materially or sustainably. And none of that addresses heightened geopolitical risk or a potentially collapsing Chinese economy. Great returns come from buying at low prices, and I've presented widely elsewhere on this blog about the arithmetic of investing in growth amid compressed PEs. It may just be that even lower prices, however, are now possible. That's all we've got time for this week. I look forward to talking with you again soon, and in the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter.